The Tesla Cybertruck was a terrible idea for Tesla. Now, if you've been paying close attention to automotive YouTube as of late, a lot of them are starting to show deliveries and reviews of the Cybertruck. I don't mean for this just to be a crap on Tesla and crap on Elon Musk video. I genuinely believe, as a shareholder, if you're a shareholder of Tesla, this was a bad idea from the start. And it's very clear when he designed this whole project that it wasn't with good ROI in mind. It was clearly just cool. Now, the weird thing about building something cool is it's hypey. You can put on a big event for it, and he did, and he got a lot of people to sign up. But if you're thinking about designing a truck for an automotive, or in his case, as they call it, a tech company, you need to consider how many of these things do you think will actually sell? Is there a market for it, etc.? None of this was considered when they took upon this project. Now, if you are someone who uses trucks or understands the truck market, you usually know there's only two things you ever build a truck for, realistically. It's either going to be a workhorse or it's going to be a toy. And I think the reason why the half-ton segment is as popular as it is because it's actually a good balance of both. It's going to be something that pulls boats, RVs, what have you, but if you're a contractor, if you're self-employed, someone who's just handy, does their own projects, all of those are a good reason to buy a half-ton, even if you're only going to do that twice a year. People will buy it for that reason. It's four-wheel drive, so if you live in the snow like I do, it's useful. Now, for obvious reasons, this truck is not a work truck. It's not a workhorse. It's not going to do what people who buy an F-150 or a Ram 1500 to be a subcontractor, to be a tradesman of any sort. They're not going to buy a Cybertruck. They're just not. There's no convenient way to attach toolbox, to attach service rigs, nothing. It's the most useless shape of a box ever. The only bonus is it can tow 11,000 pounds. And it's bulletproof, because that's very important when it comes to being a work truck. Now, some of you are saying, well, of course it's not a workhorse. It is clearly a toy. It's a competitor to a Tacoma or Frontier or Colorado. And to that I say, nay, it's not. It clearly can't go off-roading, as footage has shown. You're not going to fit a dirt bike or a quad in the back of that easily, by the looks of it. I could be wrong on dimensions, but even so, it doesn't look like it easily goes in there. You might be using that to haul a camper. You probably could. How many people are going to use their Cybertruck to haul a camper? I don't know. If Elon had legitimately consulted people on how many of these things do we think we'd sell, no one would have told him, that's a fantastic idea, Elon. We should definitely build a truck that is neither a really good toy or a really good work truck. They wouldn't have. So he's clearly gone, how many Model S's have we sold? How many Model 3s have we sold? How many of these do we think we'd sell? He expects to produce 200,000 or 300,000 this year in terms of units. And the unfortunate part about all this is that I genuinely believe, and not the biggest fanboy of Tesla by any means, or the biggest fanboy of Elon Musk for a variety of reasons, I genuinely believe if they wanted to just to have the highest ROI thing, they should have made their version of the Ford Lightning. An actual EV half-ton pickup truck that could be either a good mix of a toy or a true work truck. It would have made more sense to go the route of being a work truck, considering that Rivian tried to go after that market at least. I'm not sure how successful they really were, but they did. They could have made a better version of the Ford Lightning. That's really what they should have made. It wouldn't have been as flashy, as cool, but it would have been useful. People would have bought that. People did buy the Ford Lightning, and they paid a premium for it. And there was a lot of hype around the Ford Lightning just because it was a half-ton EV. It was the first one. And now, of course, GM and Ram are going to have theirs as well. But they could have done it. It could have been the first, and should have been the first, because they have the charging network already done. And sure enough, the first year of the Ford Lightning, it was brutal because reliability issues, and now people who spent 120 grand on that truck are trying to dump it for 60. It's unfortunate, because there's a lot of cool things you can do with EVs. You can run 110 out of the back. You can potentially run power tools and whatnot corded off the back. There's some cool things you can do. And they chose not to do it. And it's disappointing. They just made a project solely based on hype. This also doesn't tie well in the fact that their earnings quarter, I believe it was 2 months ago this meeting came out, where basically Elon admitted to himself that they dug their own grave with the Cybertruck for how much money they have put into this thing. And that's the unfortunate part, is they sunk a lot. And they took this project seriously, except for who would actually buy this thing. Because amongst all the registrations they had, remember, in 2019, when they launched this truck, you only had to spend $100 to get a deposit. And then they use that number to say, hey, look how many people are interested in Cybertrucks. What percentage of those people do you actually expect to get a truck? Meanwhile, let's not ignore the fact that because of how popular that truck seemed to be, because of how many pre-orders they got, they completely shafted the semi-truck, which is finally getting some deliveries. I'm going to make a whole video on the Tesla Cybertruck, or the Tesla. I'm going to make a whole video on the Tesla Semi, but it's the Roadster customers that really got shafted. Some of those people put in $50,000 deposits for that car. They actually wanted that car. Now, is a sports car as good of a market to go after as a half-ton truck? No, actually. But the only reason why the Cybertruck is dumb compared to the Roadster is you actually had a realistic number of serious people who wanted that Roadster. Even if the number is going to be less, the amount of people that were willing to spend $200,000 on that car and actually wanted it was probably way higher than what the number of people that actually want the Cybertruck and are going to pay $120,000 for that Cybertruck is. That brings me to my larger point, is the majority of these people who have bought these Cybertrucks and are going to actually take delivery of these Cybertrucks are just buying it because it looks cool. And I think Stratman says it best in his video that he did, where a friend of his, I believe, took delivery and he got to drive around in it. He made a really good point in that once enough of these are on the road, does the novelty of how cool it looks wear off when you see enough of them? And I genuinely believe that's the case. Now, I had to go back and confirm how many of these had been pre-ordered, and the number is pushing 2 million, or just over 2 million, whatever it was. And just for reference, Ford sells about 1 million F-150s per year. So if that many people actually plan to buy and commit to buying Cybertrucks, great. I just don't see it. I hope I'm wrong. I hope for the sake of Tesla that and the shareholders and Tesla's earnings, because I don't wish ill on any of these people. I hope that's true. I just don't see it happening. A lot of people might put their hat in a ring because it only takes $100 to do so. It doesn't mean that's how many they're going to sell. I guess overall, my takeaway is if you ordered a Cybertruck and are going to receive a Cybertruck and are excited about that Cybertruck, awesome. I have nothing against you. I have nothing against Elon. And I hope that this project is actually more successful than I think it's going to be. I'm just wanting to be realistic with people. And it's unfortunate because when they had the infrastructure and the capacity to make a real half-ton, they choose not to do it. That part just baffles me. The Model 3 was a really strategic decision because it was a fairly inexpensive car that got a lot of people into the EV space. That made perfect sense, especially after the Model S did as well as it did. So the fact they just don't go after a half-ton or even attempt to compete with Rivian, but it would make sense why they didn't, because Rivian has an option for the Tacoma type person, really is who that was after. So if you are expecting one of these trucks and are wanting to get one, awesome, cool. Don't use this as a way to deter you from that. I just think as a company, this was a very poor decision from capital allocation, in my opinion, compared to what you could be doing. And they do have some other cool stuff coming out. They got their robot coming out, which is probably going to be way more relevant than the cars. You can go on a whole other video on that. But to spend the money on what's a hype project because, hey, I made this thing that looks cool, that's not a product market fit in the slightest. So with that being said, if you're interested at all in commercial equipment, the diesel space, trades, blue collar world at all, I have a newsletter dedicated to you. It's called the Weekly Workbench. So if you're at all in the world of heavy equipment, heavy machinery, trucks at all, hit that link. And every Friday I like to update you with news that I think is relevant to the blue collar trades, heavy equipment world, specifically around diesel engines, just the world I'm in, as I'm working to become a fully fledged journeyman heavy equipment technician. So it's just the news that I like to keep up with, and I figured space for you there. So if that interests you at all, that link is in the below. See you soon.